Jim Farley is through and through a car guy. He loves cars, he loves everything about them, he loves being the CEO of one of the world's largest car makers, and he has some pretty interesting ideas about EVs, about competition, about the EV transition more generally. That's what we're going to discuss. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. I'm joined by my good buddy Mark. From the Tesla Life podcast. They do a fantastic show every week and some shorter shows that are also fantastic, but shorter. I enjoy watching it because in the chat, they will actually read your comments and respond. I love it. I will get back to joining and bothering you guys on those all the time as soon as my travel schedule permits. Yes, and I mentioned before this briefly, Lemon Tree on vacation, visiting friends and family. I don't know where, but it's, there's this law that you have to give breaks. So that's what I'm doing. Mark, good to see you.
Good to see you, Brian. Sorry that the Lemon Tree has moved off, but I'm sure it's having a good time.
It'll be back. And I will be adjusting my studio in the future to make it look a little nicer. But for now, I'm just nonstop busy. It'll probably be an over the winter project. Yes. Mm. So we saw, I don't know how many of you folks have seen it, this pretty fantastic video about with Jim Farley, where he is discussing all kinds of things. They told him to sharpen his pencil. He said, I'm not sure I can do that, but I do have an Aspen Ideas Festival to speak at. So I don't know how that works. I'm new to this, so I'm just going to assume that they have some good ideas.
Me and my electric Lightning, which I took a road trip across California, all the way down to California with my son last summer, and I learned a lot as a leader. But that's my daily driver. I drive an electric Lightning, and I'm totally converted. And I don't know why we're all stuck talking about these vehicles as if all they really do is have no carbon footprint. What really convinced me of why we should invest in EVs on a personal level is because of the experience of driving past the gas station, of effortless acceleration on the highway, or passing someone, or decelerating without using the brakes.
Okay, so help me out here. Jim Farley said the Lightning is a daily driver, that the EV experience is what, people should focus on. Talk to me.
Yeah, he seems to be all in on EVs ever since the vacation he had with his family about a year ago in the summer, where he took a Ford Lightning on a trip, which he mentioned in this clip, and said that they toured California and some adjoining states to see what the experience was. Jim really wanted to understand what his customers were dealing with, and he was able to do that by becoming a customer himself and actually driving the vehicle day in and day out, charging the vehicle, understanding what the vehicle does. And what a great way to understand what your customer's seeing if you do it yourself. It makes a lot of sense.
It really does. Now, I've driven the Ford Lightning, and I'll tell you, it didn't feel like a bumpy, it didn't feel like an old pickup truck. It felt like a new car. It is still pickup truck capable. Apparently, they had to abandon the leaf spring design for the rear wheels. They had to go with independent rear suspension just because of where the motors are, where the battery is. They had to do it differently, and it just led to a better, if not a little bit more expensive vehicle. We may see that improved in the next iteration, which will be apparently a purpose-built truck rather than more of a converted gas to electric kind of situation. And EVs are fun to drive. They are about acceleration. They are about passing gas stations. If you're driving 250, 300 miles a day, you're never going to think about gas stations again instead of stopping every 2 to 3, 4 times a week to pour all of your money into the gas tank.
That's right.
And this whole video is linked in the description. Watch it if you get a chance.
That's how important this is for our country. And I just wish more people would be talking about the experience of driving instead of the politics of EV.
Such an amazing family history that really explains your passion for the role that you're in today and also for this next phase of Ford. But I want to just back up a little bit to what is keeping people from driving EVs. There's range anxiety. People are worried they're not going to be able to find a charger, or if it is a charger, is it the kind that they can use? What should consumers be thinking right now, especially as we see the sale of hybrids rise in a way that many people didn't expect? There was an expectation that we would just make a shift towards EVs, but instead we've seen hybrids really benefit from an increase in
Totally
sales.
true. Well, I think first of all, Ford believes in power of choice. So we're also number 3 in hybrids. So we're number 2 in EVs for 2.5 years now to Tesla. We're also number 3 in hybrid behind Honda, Toyota, that largely bet on hybrids and didn't bet on EVs. We're the only company that actually offers all of it, so we get to see the customers. With a hybrid like F-150, 25%. So F-150 is the best-selling vehicle in our country for 47 years. And as far as total revenue, it's number 2 to the iPhone in total revenue, because they're like $55,000. And we sell more than 1 million of them. We make a F-150 every 40 seconds. So 25% of all F-150s are hybrids now. And one of the most popular features of the hybrid is exportable power. Many people in Texas and in Florida and in California buy F-150 hybrids because they can power their house for 2 weeks when the power goes out. That's a sad statement about our country, but that's the reality. And so hybrids have become more popular. Our hybrid business is up 40% this year. And the pricing power is more than the cost of both powertrains. That means we make more money on a hybrid than on internal combustion F-150 now.
All right, so what? That's a big statement. That's pretty bold.
Yeah, that was surprising, actually. Jim had mentioned, as you saw in the clip, that Ford is not going to make it unless they successfully transfer over to EVs. The transition is required for Ford to make it. I was shocked that he made that statement during this question and answer period.
So there are people who still think, well, if we just slow the transition to EVs, these companies will survive. They'll flourish. They'll do great. You've seen, if you look at the history of disruption, you look at someone like Nokia, someone like Blockbuster, and right before they went down the drain, they had their best quarters ever. And it's because they were right at the end. It was right at the end. It was the last flame out is what it was. And if Ford wishes to continue, so let's say the U.S. says we will never ban ICE cars and we're ending EV subsidies, just like that. That's great if your only market is the U.S., but this is a global company doing business internationally. You have to cater to all the markets in which you intend to do business. So he's right. Whether his competitors are ready to admit it or not, that is the reality.
So to talk a little bit more about competition with China, how do you see the Biden administration's tariffs on EVs impacting the Chinese government and how they approach you and Ford and also other automakers?
Yes. Well, I think it's the answer to that question is very different for each auto company. We do not have a big China business. GM has a huge one. Volkswagen has enormous. I think 60% of Volkswagen's global profit comes from China. So every company has a different exposure. Look, I think the tariffs and the policy decisions that the president has to make quickly will level the playing field. The state subsidies of free taxes, free land, a lot of R&D, we don't have the benefit from. The IRA really does help. It incentivizes us for making automotive batteries in the U.S. We made many decisions to actually make in the U.S. now because of the IRA. But the biggest issue is those are going to be speed bumps.
Okay. So that's a lot to chew on. What?
Yeah, there's certainly the China question has come up again. I know we've discussed it ourselves on this show. It's been discussed many times with many different people. But Jim obviously knows what's going on with China. He knows about their current overcapacity. He knows about their import-export abilities and what they're currently doing to Europe and to North America. He knows what's happening in Mexico. He knows that factories can be built from Chinese companies, and that they may do some importing themselves and have access to the North American market virtually tariff-free. So there's a lot of question marks in Jim's head about China and what's going on with their cars, what's going on with their collection abilities, lots of stuff that is a big question. And Jim is not really pleased about what he's seeing with China and the pushing out of their cars, EVs.
So I've seen a lot of comments on my channel saying, well, the U.S. will set up some new protection. They'll renegotiate the trade agreement with Mexico or with other countries or something like. They'll find a way to stop China from building factories in Mexico to get around this. That's not a to get around. That was the point of the trade agreements we have. The ones that were written in the 90s, NAFTA, the much more recent USMCA passed by the previous administration, those are largely the same when it comes to these particular trade issues. But the ink is still barely drying. It is a very fresh trade agreement that was just written. We can't, if we're going to renegotiate, if we're going to make our trade deals worse and worse for everyone else every few years, no one's going to sign trade agreements with us. That's not a good deal. And this is how it works. This is how it's always worked. We want Kia to come and build a plant in Georgia, which they are doing. It'll be ready next year. They'll be making the EV9 perhaps as early as the end of this year, but they've already got staff hired. This is a win for the people of Georgia. This is a win for the drivers in America. This is a win for Hyundai and Kia. This is good business.
And we want here in Canada, we want Honda to build their new EV plant in Alliston, Ontario, which they have just signed up to do. That's a win for Canada, a win for the US. Mexico is looking to have some wins too.
And that's what the whole point of these things is. You want these companies to do these things. And you can't say, well, we'll let Japan in or Korea in and Germany, but not China. That is, as I understand, not something you can legally put in an international trade agreement. It makes it difficult. And Ford gets it. They understand the tariffs. They understand the data and privacy concerns. They're just trying to get through it, I guess.
One other bit of information that Jim shared was that in Mexico currently, almost 1/4 of their vehicles are Chinese company made.
Wow. Okay. I guess that doesn't surprise me, but it did. It did. Now that you got me there. Okay, so we're going to skip all the way forward because, again, this is about an hour long. But
for example, wiring harness. All your vehicles have a wiring harness. The traditional thinking in internal combustion world is bid out your wiring harness to many different suppliers and then pick the lowest cost, the highest quality supplier. In an EV where the battery costs $30,000 and your wiring harness weighs 70 pounds extra, that's $200 a battery. So the math totally changes around the weight when you have a big, expensive battery in your vehicle. It's better to actually invest in super lightweight wiring. So an EV requires completely different engineering to optimize around the smallest possible battery for the most affordability for customers. Aerodynamics, huge impact on an EV, way more than an ICE vehicle because of the battery size. So even the way you build a vehicle, it has to be radically rethought. The way we're thinking about building a vehicle now is not do the body structure and then paint it and then put the seats and the powertrain in it. Build the right and the left and the front and the rear separately so the workers can go in and put seats and carpeting and whatever else in the vehicle, and you don't have to have large construction kind of assistant for them. Another one is put the computer in right after you paint it so it diagnoses itself whether it's being built correctly. No vision systems, no looking over our workers' shoulder to make sure they did a fastener right. It requires a completely different rethinking. because the battery is so expensive. So we created the Skunk Works 2 years ago with Alan Clark, who was the chief engineer of the Model Y, Model 3, came from Tesla, left Tesla to go to Ford. And my badge doesn't work there. It's totally separate from Ford. And they've had a completely different approach. And it looks like, you know, they're going to be successful. We're going to bet the company on them. It's a very American thing.
So the Skunk Works is something that I've been talking about for a long time because it's known. They let it be known that this is what they're working on and how they're doing it. And it's what they have to do. Your thoughts?
Well, they went outside to hire for the Skunk Works. They hired, of course, Alan, ex-chief EV engineer for the Model Y and 3. And Alan Clark, ex-Tesla, is fronting this project. Jim indicated that his key card doesn't even work at the new site, which I felt was questionable. But Jim said, no, this is completely running on its own in Southern California, and their job is to get to profitability with compelling and affordable EVs. This is what Ford has decided is their number one priority in the EV market. They need to get to profitability with a compelling vehicle that can be sold to the masses. And he's absolutely correct because, of course, with the first entry of EVs that Ford started with, 3 models, we've got the Mustang, we've got the Lightning, and we've got the Transit EV. With those 3 together, up to this point, Jim admitted that Ford has lost $5 billion to this point. $5 billion with a B. So yeah, profitability is something they need to get to immediately. And that's what the Skunk Works is all about.
With the Skunk Works, the idea is you have to start from square one. You need a clean sheet. First principles. We've heard about it with other companies like Tesla where they say, look, we don't want to know what is a car and how we make it electric. We want to say what is an electric car. And that's what Ford appears to be doing. And a lot of these efforts we've seen from a lot of manufacturers appeared very much half-hearted. But this video appears to make clear that Jim gets it. Jim gets it. Now, at around the 30-minute mark, he did talk about full autonomy. I think we're going to skip over that because they do have level 3 hands-free on the highway. They're making steps in that direction, and debating the merits of their approach versus others would be a whole series of videos. And we're already getting long enough on this. Again, I suggest you watch the whole video. It's fantastic. I plan to meet Jim Farley within the next year. I don't know how. I have a couple ideas, but I'm gonna see if I can make it happen.
Jim, you've got a head start. Start running, man.
That's not the support I was expecting. I thought you were going to be on my side. Well, the reality is, Jim's a car guy. Great. Jim's getting into EVs. Great. I've always loved cars. I'm into EVs. I'm about the mission. I'm about getting us to electrification because it works. And not every example works. I think the e-Hummer is the wrong tool for the job. But I think I could have a fantastic discussion with someone like Jim that would shed a lot of light on their strategy, what's right with it, what could be better, all that. And a lot of the things that I would say that, boy, this part needs to be worked on are things they're already working on. You need a first principles car. They're working on it. So I am hopeful that my assumptions are correct. But what would be great is if Jim would just come on and tell me. Just come on and tell me, Jim. So the last clip at 35 minutes and 45 seconds, I wanted to look at this one that you brought to my attention. Here we go.
Quick question to you about Elon Musk. You've referenced Tesla, or I should say specifically about Tesla, but you've mentioned Musk a couple of times, mentioned Tesla, mentioned them as competition, and also how you're taking a different approach. In this next phase, as you continue to transform Ford, how do you think about differentiation and competition with them and the fact that Tesla is number one in the EV space?
They are. Actually, BYD is now globally number one. Tesla is, Well, first of all, I think we'll all be very thankful that this journey was started by his vision. And he proved that we can make electric cars profitably. That's really amazing. Aside from all the rest, he was incredibly gracious to allow Ford to join the supercharger network. And for our customers, we're number 2, as I said, 2.5 years. For our customers to have access to the Tesla supercharger networks, he didn't have to do that. But he did it because he was a mission-driven person. And so I think we'll always be grateful for that cooperation. I did my op-ed today. I don't think he was super happy that it went in LinkedIn before X, but anyways. So I think, look, we have a different bet as a company than Elon's bet. Our bet from learning from this first generation is that we will compete with him at the low end, but we won't make commodity products. I believe Ford's at its best when it makes work vehicles or passion vehicles like Bronco, Mustang, F-150s. That's where we're at our best. So I think we'll be competitors, but he's not in the commercial space, and we dominate. Our second place competitor, GM, isn't half as big as us. And on the EV side, we're even more ahead of everyone. They don't even have an electric van. We're 75% of all electric vans in the US now. So we dominate. 40% of our electric commercial customers buy Ford charging systems. So we're the supercharger of commercial. And so I don't think he'll go into that business. And I think on the low end, we'll be competing with each other.
Okay, so that was one that you said we should talk about, and I agree, because this is a bigger statement than I expected.
Yeah, Jim is giving full credit to Elon and Tesla for the start of this EV revolution, bringing a compelling car that is profitable to the marketplace, bringing a supercharger network that not only was able to allow EVs to travel from point to point, but actually opening it up to other automotive manufacturers and allowing them to share in the reliability of this charging network. He indicated that Elon didn't have to do this, but Elon did, and Ford and its customers are grateful beyond words, because this is something that has enabled the regular charging of vehicles between sites and allows their customers to move with an EV all over the country without a worry that there might be a broken or occupied or other issues with a charging station. He indicates that Tesla is the top of the ladder when it comes to charging. Not a surprise to us here. But yeah, that was high praise coming from Jim.
Yes, and to me at least, a little unexpected. It was surprising. He's right that without Tesla pushing as hard as they did, EVs would not be where they are. Yes, well, what about China? China was not pushing EVs as hard as they are until Tesla came along and showed you can do it. You can make a compelling car at a competitive price that people will actually pay. They opened that door. And does that mean they'll be the biggest winner of all time? Maybe, maybe not. You can argue that all you want. But the reality is they did some big things that had to be done. There was a charging consortium that came about maybe, a year or two ago, saying all the big auto manufacturers are going to team up and make this great charging network. And then we never heard about it again. And then they all just signed up for the Tesla network. This is great. This will allow expansion. This will allow a single map to fill out as needed rather than everybody competing for the same corner of an intersection where you see currently 3-4 gas stations. If we had 3 or 4 competing chargers in one place all the time everywhere, instead of spread out, it would be a worse experience overall. So hopefully that's what we're looking to avoid. He did also say that that Ford is trying to compete in the commercial sector where, so far at least, Tesla has not really pushed. And I think that's a good way to leave some money on the table for the other guys to get. And Ford has done well historically with commercial customers.
They have, but that may be short sighted too, because as we've seen with Tesla, yes, they're not in the commercial market as of this point wholly, but it wouldn't take much. Introduction of a van that's going to be used as a camper or a fleet vehicle, and all of a sudden you've got an entrant into the commercial space that Ford is sitting in basically by themselves at this point.
You know, it's funny that there was a lot of concern when Ford and others started outsourcing their factories to other countries that quality would fall. Well, quality had been falling for a long time. Price definitely fell. Depending where you outsource to, quality fell too. But you remember, for the longest time, Ford's slogan was "Quality is job one," and then they moved all their factories to Mexico and said, "Quality is job one." So I think I'm pretty sure that's how that went down. So you guys in the comments, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Leave it, I beg of you. I beg. With all the grace and gratitude that I can. Thank you for the comments. Head on over to the Tesla Life podcast. See what Mark's up to over there. They do great stuff, and I enjoy the channel, and I think they need more love. They just do.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, quit making good stuff, and I'll stop saying it. So, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? You know, like, subscribe, do the usual, and stay tuned. Stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots in Mexico, where I may get to go sometime before too long. We'll see.